Do you ever feel like there's something holding you back from being your true, authentic self? Like maybe there's a level of your personality that you feel like you don't show as often as you could. Or there's times you're with groups of friends, or you're with friends, or you're with somebody, and you have something you want to say, but there's something that holds you back from saying it. Or maybe even when you're trying to connect to people at a deeper level, you feel like there's a little bit of a wall or some type of barrier up. Well, this year I've been doing a ton of shadow work for myself, becoming aware of the different levels of my own shadow. And there's something that I honestly wasn't even aware of that I had within my own body. And it's almost like I thought I dealt with it, because back in 2012, I went through my awakening and I let go of so much of my pain in my past. Many of you know my story of the ex-stepmom situation between 7 to 16 years old and being manipulated and not really having my own freedom. And then after that, 15, 16 years old coming around, I was able to be my free, authentic self, at least I thought. And there was definitely parts of the shadow that I wasn't aware of. And what I'm realizing now more than ever is that there's this denial that I had around trauma, and more specifically around trauma that is held in the body. And I'm realizing now that this trauma that I've been carrying around, not even knowing it, like, well, I dealt with it in the mind, I dealt with it, I've forgiven my ex-stepmom, I feel more free than ever, I do what I love for a living, but still, there's a level of this trauma that's been inside my body that I've been learning how to release. And as I release it, I feel like I connect more to people. I feel like I could be my most authentic, expressive self. And I feel just lighter. I feel more free. And what I wanted to do in this video is to show you a couple of those things that I'm doing and share with you how I go about it and kind of take you along the process with me, because I haven't been doing it that long. I've only been doing it a couple days now. And today I want to actually maybe even do some of the exercises for you. They're going to look kind of ridiculous, but they're going to, I think, help you release stored trauma that might be inside of your body. And I'll show you those exercises. Let's go over there right now. So actually, before we even get into it, I want to bring you outside for a second, because this to me represents, kind of nature. And when you look at animals, animals don't store trauma in their body. What happens with animals, and if you were to look at gazelles, I also have a coach for this as well, somebody I'm going to, and he explained this analogy to me. And what he said is, if you have an animal like a gazelle, and there's a cheetah that is chasing this gazelle, and say it gets one of the gazelles, but there's like 2 or 3 other gazelles that get away and they go back to their herd. Before they go back into the herd, apparently what most animals do is they release the stored trauma. So if there's because they feel so tense and they felt so fight or flight, and normally they'll either fight, flight, or freeze. And based on what they do, they store that trauma in their body. But before they go back into the herd, what they do is they actually release that trauma. They release that stored energy. You'll even see this. I remember hearing about Eckhart Tolle talk about ducks. He noticed ducks at a park. And one thing they do is these 2 ducks would get into a fight. And what happened is they would fight, but then at the end of it, they would do this thing with their wings after the fight was over, because ducks don't really fight to the death. Once the fight was over, they would then they would flap their wings to release excess energy. That's so that they don't store the trauma inside their bodies. Now what happens is, even with gazelles, it's the same thing. They will release that. They just know to intuitively do that. I was reading a book, it's called like Waking the Tiger or something like that, and it's about trauma. And it literally said like they completely spaz out before going back into the herd. Now why is that? They are releasing the trauma from their body so that they don't have to carry it around. And then what happens is then they're more free. They could just go back to their old self. Now the problem with humans is that what we do is we have an experience that happens, and then we can intellectualize it, we can remember it, we can play it over in our mind over and over and over and over again. And then it stays like stored inside of our body. And then we have this like shell around our body. And I actually remember I went to a breath workshop in Costa Rica, and I went to this life transformation spa or place. And I was doing this breath workshop. At the end of it, it was so transformative. You breathe in a certain pattern, you're releasing this stored emotion. My hands like clenched up like this, and I could feel this energy leaving my body. And it was like almost a psychedelic experience with 0 psychedelics. And the person that was leading it there was a woman that was one of the like the leader helpers or whatever. She says that by looking at someone's breathing pattern, you can tell their personality. And one thing she said about me is she said, your breathing pattern is that of an achiever, because I asked her afterwards, like, what does this mean? You're an achiever. You're somebody that went through a lot of pain, and what you did is you put an armor around your body, like almost like a shield around your body to protect you, and now you carry yourself and you have this drive to be successful, which is serving you in some ways, but now you believe things have to be hard, and you have the shell around you, and people can't really get too close to you. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, huh. I was like, it did resonate. And she's like, did you go through a lot of pain growing up? And I was like, yeah, well, you know, between 7 and 16 years old, I had an abusive ex-stepmom in my life, and I wasn't allowed to have friends, wasn't allowed to have freedom, wasn't allowed to watch TV, had to earn going to school, got in trouble for just about everything. And she said that's what it was. You in that vulnerable state of being a child, you had traumatic experiences that then you weren't able to shake off, you know, you weren't able to release that breathing pattern. It was like something happened in the past. My breathing pattern shifted. And when my breathing pattern shifted, it correlates with emotions, confidence. And me, I do this thing when I breathe sometimes, and I'm learning to not do it as much, but I do. So it's almost like I tense my back and open it so I can breathe in more air. And it's this part of myself that is also this armor that's like right around here. There's like this armor that's like keeping me safe, keeping me protected. The problem is that now if I'm dating someone, I want to feel more connected, or I have to let that guard down. But there's that guard up because I have this belief. And even if you think about even the shadow work of that, like that was specifically around my ex-stepmom, which is a woman. So it's like there's an association there. That's what I've learned. I have to let go of that association towards having a barrier up of being almost afraid because something bad could happen. So what this has to do with really is letting go of the trauma that's been stored, and there's exercises that I can do to almost become more like an animal. Become more like an animal, but to release that emotion, to release that energy. And the key to really the healing is to be more like the animals and to be more free and to release the energy. I think even when I used to do yoga, I used to do Bikram yoga, and I stopped doing it for a long time, but you camel pose, you do these things, you do some of these positions like camel pose, or where you're really doing these big back bends. People sometimes get very emotional because a lot of energy is stored in the spine and stored in the body. So then it's like they have these big releases, and they're just doing like camel pose with 40 other people in a Bikram yoga studio. So that's kind of the idea, is it's opening up the body, but there's actual specific exercises that I learned yesterday, and I'll go take you in there right now and I'll show you what they are. All right, so there's this guy on YouTube that's been on for a long time. His name's Elliot Hulse, and he talks a lot about bioenergetics. And I'm gonna watch parts of this video to get refreshed in my own mind, and then I'll actually do the exercises in front of you guys. So basically what he says is to have your feet about shoulder width apart. And what you do is it's a breathing exercise that has you breathe into your pelvic area. And what it does is it opens up the front side of your body, and it's very common for there to be some type of shaking. And I'll show you guys, because when I do this, it's like I can definitely feel that shaking begin to come up. There's like breath work I've done before, and I feel that shaking come up. And then what you do is you put your hands like this. So I'll kind of show you. So feet about shoulder width apart like this. What you do is you kind of lean back like this, put my hands over like each part of my lower back, and then I go like this, and I feel this big stretch on my front, and then I let my neck kind of hang back a little bit too. And then what I do is I have to breathe deeply like this. See how my body's shaking now? And sometimes when I'm doing it too, what helps is release the energy, is to laugh. Wow. See, it looks ridiculous. But even as I do that right there, I feel like I'm releasing energy. Oh man, I can even feel it in my throat, my voice. And laughing. I think one of the reasons I laugh a lot when I'm in like not just traumatic, like after, like I laugh when I do that. Between 7 and 16 years old, the ex-stepmom thing, I wasn't allowed to laugh, really. I wasn't allowed to have fun. And I feel like part of my inner child was kind of kept in a little box. So one thing I do by doing this exercise is it helps me to release that inner child more. Helps me to release that stored energy inside the body. And there's other things you do too. Like one of the other ones is like you're literally like shaking and you're like yelling, you're like screaming, you're kind of like yelling, and what you're doing is you're allowing the energy, think of sound as energy, to leave your body. And I'll normally do that for a couple minutes, that thing I just showed you, for at least a minute or two, and it becomes very uncomfortable. You don't want it to be painful, but uncomfortable is like normal. And then as it's opening up, it's releasing that energy. And then the other side of this though is that then, I'll show you guys the next exercise, which has to do with really letting yourself be free. And really letting yourself like release the energy without doing like repetitive patterns, but I'll show you what it is here in a second. Let me find it. Also, one more thing is when you're doing this, I recorded it and then I was like, oh, I gotta throw this little tip in there. When you're doing this and you're going back like that, what you want to do I'm talking, so it's a little bit harder for me to do the complete thing, but what you want to do is, if you watch that video that I link below as well, it shares it more in detail, but you want to like open up and then also open up your tongue like that. And then what sometimes people do is they'll actually put their hands back like that, but you can go like that and then and you want to breathe. And that tongue going out, you'll notice that your throat might begin to clog up. Because at a certain time when you were a kid, someone told you to shut up. And then you constricted that, which this has to do with your expression in life and how you express yourself. So by opening up the throat, you might feel like gagging. Your neck might get really red. That's actually very normal. And the key is, as you feel it, be very present with all these emotions that come up. Even after I recorded this whole video that you're about to watch the rest of, I did another exercise afterwards of myself where I could really let go without being in front of the camera and everything. And I could just feel that energy leaving my body. I was just becoming very present with it. I was just laughing hysterically while doing this exercise you're about to see. And that laughing is also kind of a form of crying because it's a form of release, right? It's like, like you laugh, and then at the very end, you can almost feel where it's like trauma coming out. And it's very powerful. And as you feel it, it's almost like you're letting that animal instinct release. And as you release it and you be present with it, not try to escape it, you be present with it, you begin to release it. And it's very powerful. So anyways, we'll get back in the video. I just wanted to put that little tidbit in there. All right, now the key to this exercise is completely letting go. And what this does is this loosens up the hands, this loosens up really any stored energy, any trauma in the body. You begin to shake it and you begin to like release it. Just like, remember the animals, like after they get out of something, after they get out of like a wild chase from the cheetah, they spaz out and do this crazy stuff that releases that energy. And the idea behind this is to really let go and also get out of your head. It helps to do this when you're more so by yourself. Maybe not people around, but you can do it with people around as well. But what it helps you to do is really also let go of thinking, oh, am I being too loud? You know, even though I'm in this house, I'm like, oh, can the neighbors hear? Like these thoughts come up. But the key to this is really just letting go. And what you do is you're like going like this. You're moving your hands like this. You're shaking like this. And then you could also be making a noise. It's like, See, there was times in my past, I think, where I wasn't able to really express myself even though I would have been angry, especially when dealing with like traumatic abuse or something like that. And part of me, when I do breath work sometimes, that yelling really comes out. And I think that what it does is it's releasing that energy, that pent up energy, the fear of being angry or of expressing our emotion. Because sometimes we believe that if we do express our emotion, maybe we won't be as loved. So that kind of exercise I do and will be doing to continue to really express, let go of that stored energy in the throat, in the chakras, and all the way up and down. I'm gonna do more of it. It's just I don't know how much I'm gonna put on a YouTube video, you know what I mean? But yeah, I get kind of crazy like that. And I just kind of wanted to also model that so you could see what it's like to go a little bit crazy like that. So that you can give yourself permission to be crazy too, whatever that is. Doing new patterns and like shaking yourself and then yelling, and then that's releasing energy. That's releasing stored energy. And afterwards you feel much more grounded. And also my voice gets deeper after I do that. And I feel more expressive. You know, we hold tension also sometimes in our head, in our eyes, in our nose, like in our cheeks. You ever see people that kind of have like this all the time? Because when they were kids, they were probably not allowed to express themselves completely, so they've shut that down. But it's not bad to be using your facial expressions. And the key is understanding that what you could do is when you're doing these release exercises, you may feel more free to then express yourself. Because we don't just communicate via our voice and our words. It's the tonality, it's the facial expressions, the subconscious cues, the body language. You know, I notice that when I'm the most free, my body language is very on point, it's very natural. So what I'm sharing with you, those two exercises are ones that I'm gonna be doing here moving forward. And I'm gonna be doing this to release that emotion, to release that stored energy, to see how much more free I end up feeling from it. And I'll go ahead and link that video from Elliot. This is like a daily Bio-Energizer warm-up routine. It's from Elliot Hulse. I'll go ahead and link that below as well. You can check out that video. Those both exercises are in there. There's other exercises as well. But just in general, we hold energy inside of our body, and when we release it, we begin to become more free. And we'll see that then that because we're not carrying around that energy, we're not attracting people in our life to mirror back that energy, to mirror back that abuse, or mirror back the lack of love, or have a wall up so that you can't really connect with people on a very deep level. So these are things that I think we can all use. Do those exercises. Let me know what you think. Comment below if you want to see more experiential videos like this where I actually show you more. It's a little bit less content, but it's like showing you through a process. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. And as always, I love you guys. Peace, much love, namaste.